The Essendon VFL side has lost to the Sydney Swans 94-71. It's actually a pretty good performance, and we're going to go through it all in this video right now. So the final score in this match was 94-71. The Bombers trailed at one stage by 48 points, 51-3. We were basically couldn't do a thing right in the first quarter. It was 6-0 in the first term, and it looked like it was going to be a 100-point loss. But they fought back to lose by less than 4 goals. There was a big breeze going to the right-hand side of screen. That was one of the reasons why there was so much scoring to one of the ends, and it's wet and windy conditions there in Sydney. But what looked like it was going to be a 100-point loss ended up being a pretty respectable performance. It was, look, the Bombers are under the pump at the moment in the VFL. We've got not many listed players playing. We only had the 7 listed AFL players playing in this game. The Swans had 14, and this has been the case in most games in the second half of the year with our injury struggles in the seniors. That has flowed down into the VFL team, obviously, as you can understand. And one of our best players in the VFL in recent weeks, Jaden Wynn, making his debut, of course, against the Swans in the seniors, wasn't playing, so that further weakens the VFL team. But there were a couple of reasonable performances. One of them, we're going to go through them, Kayle Gerreyn, who had 17 disposals, 7 marks. He had a score involvement, which doesn't mean a lot because he was playing mainly in the back line. 4 contested possessions, but 10 intercept possessions, which was an excellent performance. This is probably the best performance he's had in the back line. In fact, that was the most intercept possessions on the ground. The only other player that would match that was Riley Bias of the Sydney Swans. So he obviously is someone that they might develop to play in the back line. We'll see. We don't know. But that's pretty exciting if you've got another tall player down there who could potentially develop into that. Rhys Unwin also had a pretty reasonable game. 4 tackles, 5 clearances, 4 score involvements, and a huge 13 contested possessions. He was also one of our best players. The most amount of contested possessions on the ground was Taylor Adams, obviously a senior player who, former Collingwood player, now played with the Swans. He had 15. So Rhys Unwin had the second most on the ground and the most from any Bomber. So that was an encouraging performance. He, of course, his name has come up recently simply because he's one of the players that hasn't played hasn't made his debut yet. He hasn't been, putting up huge numbers, to be fair, in the VFL, and there is a little bit of a question mark whether he can run out games and things like that. But look, this was a pretty good performance from him, 13 contested possessions, and I thought he looked pretty good. Elwin Davey Jr. He continued his good form in the back line. He had 18 possessions, 3 marks, 1 tackle, 4 score involvements, 7 contested possessions, and 7 intercept possessions. He looks quite natural down there. And I can't help but think of a what if here with Davey, simply because he's probably going to get delisted at the end of the year, simply because we have to delist 9 or 10 players. And if he doesn't go, well, who does go? All right, I mean, we've gone through this in other videos. You've seen me and other creators on YouTube go through. He's virtually has no chance of staying on the list. And I can't help but think if he'd played a bit more football over the last couple of years in the back line as a small defender, whether he could have prolonged his career. Now, he's not gone yet. They haven't made any decisions on him yet. Maybe he will stay. I doubt it. But he had a pretty good game again today, and we have to acknowledge that his form really has got better as the VFL season has gone on. VGO Visentini had 12 disposals, 2 marks, 3 tackles, 3 clearances, 3 score involvements, 4 contested possessions, and 34 hitouts. He had a pretty good duel there, I thought. Look, I'm happy to see Vigo play out the remainder of the year in the VFL. I see him as part of our future, but I don't think he's ready. I've stated this a number of times before, and I think he's ready for AFL football. He's been monstered the 2 times that he has played in the AFL, and I just want to see him develop in the VFL. There is nothing wrong with developing in the VFL. That's what it's for in many ways, and I'd like to see him play in the rest of the season in the VFL. And I anticipate he probably will. The only match I think he may get in the seniors for the rest of the year is potentially the last game of the season against the Gold Coast. simply because that's going to be coming off a short break on a Wednesday night. Well, we anticipate it's going to be a Wednesday night after what we think is going to be either a Thursday or Friday night game against Carlton. So it makes sense to have Goldstein have maybe his last game and maybe a farewell game perhaps against Carlton, looking a bit ahead here. And then Vigo could perhaps come in for that last game of the season against the Gold Coast. I think that's probably what is going to happen. Saad El-Hawli. Now, just before I get into El-Hawli, I just thought it was interesting. This is the way the team lineups were announced. Now, look, you can see there that means nothing. I mean, Unwin's announced at full-back. He's not going to play full-back, He's 5 foot something. But so whilst it's just a convention the way these are lined up now, you can see the 6 listed AFL players are all named in that back line there. And El-Hawli's named on the bench. Now, you can take that for what you will. The bench doesn't mean as much these days as what it used to. Players come in and go from there all the time. But it seems odd that he's named on the bench and everyone else is named on the ground, especially considering he's an AFL-listed player. And remember, he was dropped last week. And on form, look, he didn't have a great game last week, but really, his VFL form was good and you could justify him being in the side instead of Lual. So the fact that he was dropped when his form was clearly better than Lual and he's named on the bench there in the VFL makes me wonder if there's something else going on. I have no idea. I don't know. I'm just theorising and I'm not predicting, but it is odd that he was dropped when he perhaps could justify you could justify him being in the team, and he's named on the bench there. So you do wonder whether there is something going on behind the scenes. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? I'd like to know. Zach Johnson had 22 possessions, 5 marks, 1 tackle, and 6 contested possessions, as well as 6 intercept possessions. He's a pretty classy player. We know that his form at VFL level before he made his AFL debut was very, very good. We were all calling him to come into the seniors, and he really needed this run because he was sub a couple of times in the AFL. There was, buys in there. I think he's only played less than, somewhere between 40 and 50% of game time. So he really needed this run, and I think it's probably a good thing once, players have had 8 or 9 games in the AFL. These players that are maybe, like a part of our future, but they're still young and, probably do need a bit of a run in that lower level where they can get a bit more of the ball and get some confidence and form back. I think this was probably a good thing for Johnson to get some form back. He was one of our better players. Archer Day Wicks, who's been very, very quiet over the last couple of games, was actually a bit better today. He had 12 possessions, 2 marks, 4 tackles, 1 clearance, 1 score involvement, and 3 contested possessions. He's sort of really been struggling getting single-figure digits single-figure numbers in terms of his disposal count the last few games he's played, and he really needed to step up. And look, whilst I don't think he was a notable player in the game today, certainly his form today was better than what it had been the last few games, which is what he needs to do if he is going to, break back into the senior team at one point. He's, not out of contract. He's contracted for next year, so I think he probably does remain on the list unless he gets traded or something. So, he'll want to continue his good form because I think, in my opinion anyway, he does struggle to have an impact on games. He's a good size, he's got good skills, all that sort of thing, but it's just his impact on games, I think, seems to be lacking. So that is the VFL game, Essendon versus the Sydney Swans from Sydney. It was played in wet and windy conditions. I wonder if you guys watched it. If you did, let me know what you think. Let me know which players you think should come into the senior team. Is there a chance that Rhys Unwin makes the 15th debut for an Essendon player in the coming weeks? What about Kayle Gerreyn? Arguably our best player today. Could he play in the back line? He's been a forward line player, a forward ruck sort of player for most of the season. But, today you'd have to give props to him. He played really well. So I'm going to leave it there. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a great day, everybody. And as always, go Bombers.